Good evening. My name is Shelley No, and I work at Women's Community House. We run the largest secure shelter for women and their children in the country, with 67 beds. And we do that out of two shelters, one on Wellington Road, that's the one that most people know about, and one on Clark Road, which is 8 years old, 8.5 years old now. So Women's Community House, we're in our 35th year, we're celebrating 35 years. So I'd much rather be celebrating the end of violence against women rather than 35 years of providing shelter and safe places for women to have to flee to and to bring their children as well. However, we've been celebrating some of the successes that we've had over the 35 years. 35 years ago, a wonderful group of people got together, realized that there were women in the community where their homes were not safe for them. They didn't have any idea how large the issue was at the time. And there were already, I think, about 5 shelters in Canada. Woodstock was the first, I think it was the first shelter in Canada. And they opened a little place on Piccadilly with probably about 10 or 12 beds. And the first family that came in filled the shelter. I think that's when they realized, we're going to need a bigger place pretty soon. Shortly, a few years after that, we opened on another place, an old house on Maitland, and then we built a shelter on Wellington Road, and it was guided by the women that we were serving, the women and children that we were serving. What did they need? What did they want? And then we built a place to meet those needs. High security, 17 cameras around the perimeter, lots of bells and whistles. And if you've ever been to the shelter, you have to go through 3 doors before you're actually in the women's and the children's shelter. And that's on their part, and then you can get into the administrative side. And it's 3 doors to get into as well. So lots of bells and whistles. And, we don't need that kind of security for every woman who comes in the door, but we do need that kind of security for some people who come to seek safety. So we have to ensure that we have everything we possibly can do in order to keep women and children safe. So now we have the 2 shelters with 67 beds. We have a 24-hour helpline. We have walk-in crisis. So if folks want a face-to-face, they can come to one of the shelters and sit down and talk to a counselor. And sometimes they'll stay in shelter. Sometimes it's just one intervention. They need some resources, some referrals, and they're able to move on. We have our outreach programs. We're probably serving as many people or more people in our outreach programs as we are in our shelter programs now. So we have transitional outreach for women and for men, because it's not residential. We can serve men who have been abused as well. And certainly it might be a handful of men per year that we're serving. When we call ourselves Women's Community House, men who've been abused don't typically think that that would be a place that they can call. So they have to know somebody to know that they can help use our helpline and our outreach programs. We have a family court support program. So anybody who is a victim of domestic violence navigating the family court system, I don't know if you've ever tried it. It's not the easiest system to try and navigate. We have now a program, folks who will help them navigate that system in a way that's efficient, in a way in which they're prepared, and it's not quite so overwhelming. It's an incredible program. We have our outreach program that I've talked about, and it's a program of 3, and they're serving 600 women and a few men every year in that program, plus their families. So pretty incredible. We have a community group program for children who have been exposed to woman abuse, which was run for years through CAS. And we were a partner in that program, and now it's gone out to communities. So we're providing those groups in the community for children and for their moms. And so it's a pilot this year, so we're hoping that we'll be able to continue with our funding. Our shelter, our second stage housing is transitional housing for women and their children. They can live there for up to years, sometimes 2. Depending on what their needs are. It's a 25-unit apartment building tucked away in South London on Ernest and Bradley. People barely know that it's there. And we're serving 25 families at a time. So usually there's, each unit turns over at least once, sometimes twice over the year. So that many families are also served. We probably serve in all of our programs, including our helpline. We touch the lives of about 6,000 people a year, and their children, and all of those people that they're connected to. So their families, their colleagues, their co-workers, their neighbors, and their children, of course. So, when you think about the far-reaching, that one intervention can reach so many people, just with a phone call or with one meeting with a woman, or in some cases with a man. London is an incredible community. We have wonderful resources. We have vast resources. People come to London because we have such great resources. And so there are still waiting lists for those wonderful resources and services. We have a London Coordinating Committee to End Women Abuse, which has a membership of 25 or 30 from our community, women's services, police, legal, health. There are lots of different folks who come together and organizations that come together to try and coordinate the services around violence against women in our community. In fact, we're well known for some of the coordinated services that we're able to provide through that one committee. And so sometimes they're able to prioritize some of the issues that we might want to work on as a community. We have so many other services. London Abuse Women's Service Center provides counseling and groups, individual counseling and groups for women. We're often mixed up with the London Abuse Women's Center. LOC is its name. Sexual Assault Center London, which is now in the Goodwill building, beautiful building on Horton. They provide services, a helpline, services for women, for men now, for youth. They have wonderful public education programs for youth and individual counseling as well. There's Sexual Assault and Domestic Violence Treatment Center through St. Joe's, and it's a 24-hour emergency for women or men who have experienced sexual abuse or have been physically assaulted. Atalosa Native Family Healing Services they're spread out throughout the community. They have counseling and individual programs for Aboriginal families in our community. They have a shelter for abused women with about 18 beds for women and children. They have transitional housing for the Aboriginal community. They have incredible services for the First Nations Aboriginal community. Changing Ways is a service for men who abuse, and actually now they're providing groups for women who are charged with abuse. And they also have a Caring Dads program, and they do safety planning with the women of the men who are in their group programs who have been abusers. Women's Rural Resource Center in Strathroy is a shelter, second stage housing, transitional outreach programs for women in the Middlesex County area. Muslim Resource Center, Barb's on that board, and they're providing services specifically to the Muslim community. They've built from, they used to be housed at Family Services Thames Valley, and now they have their very own office. London Homes Coalition. So some of the issues that come out of violence against women are poverty. So women who end up leaving their homes almost always end up living in poverty for some period of time. They've either had to leave their jobs, their school, and financial security. So poverty is a big issue. Trying to find housing on a low income is an issue. There are lots of programs available that the government has legislated and to provide to ensure that women who have been abused when they set this legislation, it was really important that it happened, but again, they had no idea the number of women who would be seeking priority housing. They had no idea that once these services were in place and we began to do public education, that so many people would be trying to access those services. So there's not enough housing for women who are leaving their homes. And so essentially they're homeless. And I think because when people come into shelter, we think, oh, they're not homeless, they've got shelter, they've got a place to stay. But they don't have their own home, a place that belongs to them, a door that they can shut, close and lock and call their own and do what they want, and create a space that feels good to them and for their children. So homelessness is a huge issue. We have now a London Homeless Coalition, and it's coordinated. There are several organizations and individuals who participate on that coalition, and from that we have developed community plans for housing and homelessness as well. We were talking the other day when we were talking about this event tonight about the issue of human trafficking, because that's an emerging issue, and with many emerging issues, this is a community that's caring, and we want to be able to assist and help people who have experienced that, and many of them are women. In fact, when we think about human trafficking, we think about international, that people are coming from other countries, and in fact it's domestic. Most human trafficking in Canada is domestic, and most of the people involved, or most of the people being trafficked, are young women, and most of those young women are First Nations Aboriginal women. So it is a violence against women issue as well, and we're seeing those women come through our shelters as well. There are lots of ways that people can help at any of these services. There are lots of volunteer programs. Women's Community has a volunteer program. We probably have 60 volunteers who are active, who help out in childcare, who help out in our kitchens, sorting donations, administration, and we could not do what we do without the community to help us, to assist with those kinds of things. And again, in the volunteer program, men can participate in that program. The children love it when they see men come in, and men who are safe and who are role modeling safe activities with them. They love it because mostly they see women in shelters, so it's a real it's a treat, actually. So there are lots of different ways that people can help out in our communities, and lots of coordination. I've left some information at the desk. One of the programs that Barb's been involved with for many years is called Neighbors, Friends, and Families. And she touched on how can we help, what can we do when we suspect or we think that a neighbor, a friend, or a family is being abused, family members being abused. And there are some interventions. We don't have to step in and take over and create an unsafe situation for ourselves, but there are ways that we can help. And the Neighbors, Friends, and Family program, which you can find online very easily, is a way in which we as a community can take responsibility and help to end violence against women, and to help to make our community as safe as we possibly can. Thank you.